Welcome to the Book Club Life, where we talk a lot about books and a lot about life with awesome author interviews whenever we get the chance. And today I just spent the most wonderful day at the Mississippi River Readers Retreat with Julie Klassen and a host of other talented authors. And it was wonderful. I highly recommend it. I laughed, I cried. I didn't realize I should have packed tissues in my purse. It was a really special day. And Julie has agreed to come and talk with us a little bit about her most recent novel, which I loved. Julie, you're one of those authors that I reward myself with every December. Sometimes I'm nice and I let my family gift me the book under the tree, but more often than not, I'm naughty and I just buy it for myself and read it throughout the Christmas season. And when I opened this up, by the end of the second page, I already had that hook in my heart of just,
good.
Sinking right into the story. And Julie is one of those authors that does that every time, which is a rare thing. So Julie, will you tell us just a little bit about this book, and then we'll dive right into the questions?
Sure. A Castaway in Cornwall is about a young woman, Laura Calloway, who has to move away to remote Cornwall to live with distant relatives after the kind of mysterious deaths of her parents. And by the time we meet her, she has been living in Cornwall for several years, but she still doesn't fit in. She doesn't feel like she belongs there. But then one night there is a shipwreck, and a man is washed ashore. She helps rescue him and tends his wounds. And she realizes there is something unusual about his injuries and his accent. So even though she begins to understand he's not who he claims to be, he also might hold the key to finding out the truth about her parents' fate. So she helps him, facing danger and a growing attraction for the handsome castaway.
All right, so that Julie Klassen mystery, and definitely lots of romance too.
Yeah.
So I identified a little bit with the main character and that feeling like you don't quite fit. Mm-hmm. I've had times in my life like that, and I know other people have as well. So I was going to ask you, have you ever gone through a time where you felt like an outsider yearning to belong? And if you want to tell us about that, and then what settled your heart during that time, or what settles your heart whenever you do feel that way? Because I know it can come and go sometimes.
You're right. Well, I did have that experience, as a young person. We moved from the big city of Chicago to a small little town in central Illinois where the kids had all known each other, and I was coming in and I was the city girl and I had a little funny accent and I did not fit in. And that lasted throughout my grammar school and high school experience. And that was hard, but thankfully I had just a couple of good friends. And whenever kids struggle, I think even if they have one good friend, but I was blessed to have a few good friends. So we were nerds and we spent time together, and we were okay long term. But that certainly did affect me, where I realized I sort of would go into a kind of a new situation. I would meet a new group of people, especially a group of women, and assume that they would not like me. And so that has taken time. Now that I'm older, a lot of those kind of past relationships have healed. And now I think because of Christ and because of being kind of sisters in the Lord, now when I go into a group like today at this wonderful retreat, I just, I'm glad you probably asked me that, because I didn't have that feeling anymore. And somewhere over the last, 10, 15, 20 years, that feeling has dissipated, and I don't expect people to dislike me on sight necessarily anymore. So I'm very grateful that that's gone. And that's, I think, part of being in the kingdom, that we do belong.
Right.
And that's great.
I've noticed that you are a very welcoming person. From the very beginning, the first time I met you, you were so welcoming. And I bet that is in part because of what you went through. And so is that true, that that's affected you?
Well, thank you. I hope so, because I do think that God lets us go through hard times and sometimes, but hopefully they do make you more empathetic. Yeah. And some good comes out of it. So
I assumed that about you, because I feel like I am a nicer person, because I also had the thing where I went to a school where I didn't know anybody, but I had my one good friend that didn't go to that school.
So you get
it. So it's tough. But when the Lord loves you and you know Him, that brings a security that being adrift in a sea of people that don't care for you, doesn't, but that takes care of it.
Yeah,
so.
Indeed.
Okay, so another question. So this is set on Cornwall, and it reminded me a little bit of Poldark. Is that the same kind of general area?
It's, it is in Cornwall. It's
Okay.
not. This is on the North Cornwall coast.
Okay.
So not exactly. And actually, did not. Don't hate me, but I did not watch Poldark, the new one. I'd already seen the original version shot in the 1970s. So I saw bits and pieces of that. And I certainly understand the appeal, especially of the setting. So it's set on that windswept Cornish coast,
Yes.
not exactly where Poldark is set. Though actually when they filmed it, I'm not sure I could tell you exactly where it was set in the books.
Okay.
When they filmed the show, they went all over Cornwall for many different settings.
Well, in particular, the shipwreck part reminded me of that because the people could go and find whatever treasures they could find that washed up and would keep them. And so that happens in your book. So I was wondering if you could tell us what is a treasure that you have that you would not want washed on shore and for someone to take? What is a treasure that you...
Well, I can think of quite a few treasures that I've been blessed to receive. But since I have this one with me, I will point to this one. It is not only my wedding ring, but the diamond was my grandmother's, my maternal grandmother, Julia.
Wow.
Wedding ring. And so it was a solitaire, but when my husband and I had it for a long time, and then when we got engaged, we had it made into a new setting, but I always remember her.
That is
anyway,
beautiful.
But certainly when I look at my hand.
My wedding ring is also inspired by my grandmother. It's not her diamond. I don't know if you can see that either. So here we are.
Jewelry television.
Yes, but when my husband was going to propose, I just kind of slipped him this little Avon ring. My grandmother would let us go and look at her rings.
Okay.
And I said, I love this ring. It was my grandmother's, just so you know that. And so
This
he
is
basically,
the style that you...
yes, he duplicated it. And so
Oh,
I think of my
nice.
grandmother when
Lovely.
I see my ring. So beautiful grandmother
That's
stories.
very
Yes.
common.
Well, if you have time for one more question,
I do.
we'll do one more. And this is really just for fun, or you can take it however you want to take it.
Okay.
What has been bringing you joy? What brings you joy? Because it's been a tough couple of years for a lot of people. So what brings you joy?
That is a very timely and interesting question, Jenny, because I'm not going to give you a traditional answer, just because oddly enough, this is a topic that I feel like God has been sort of gently bringing to my mind, because we haven't gone through a tough time, and I've been just thinking, I need to figure out a way to hold on to joy, because there's still plenty to be joyful about, especially our Savior, and I have not been doing a good job of holding on to joy. So it's a very timely question, and something I feel like I might even want to incorporate that into my next novel, because I have been things that God has been teaching me, I've been trying to do a little bit more of incorporating those things into the novel. So I think that is something I'm going to be exploring more. How do you keep that joy when times are hard? So I'm still, in all honesty, working on it. And I can think of things that have brought me, pleasure. In this internet age, I've been connecting with lots of people on Zoom and that sort of thing that I wouldn't necessarily see. Doing a lot more reading, listening to a lot more audiobooks when we had more downtime. So there have certainly been pleasurable things, but I'm going to work on
The joy.
being joyful. So next time you talk to me,
I'll ask you.
Ask me how
How's
I
the joy
did.
coming?
Ask me how I did.
I love your candor and your honest sharing of that. And that's actually something the Lord kind of throughout my life has, that I would not be so rocked by little things, just one little comment or whatever that, hey, don't let that get to you. Keep your eyes on me. And when I do, I just have so much joy. But whenever I don't, it's like that verse, you are the vine. No, I'm the...
This is Jesus talking.
Thank you.
I am the vine, you are the branches, remain in me and I in you, and we will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing.
That's right.
Something
and
like
so
that.
when we're connected to Jesus and spending time with him and in his word, it just makes such a difference. And it changes everything. So
Good reminder for all of us.
Yes, and neat little tidbit to be looking for. Maybe you might see it in the next book, so we'll have to watch out for that. Speaking of, tell us, what is your next book?
Okay, well, the next book is Shadows of Swanford Abbey, coming out in December. So that one's already done. That one's already proofread, and that has some other things God has been teaching in me. But 2022 will have to be, I have till 2022 to figure out joy. So
Okay. Well, Julie, you were wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the Book Club Life. If you would like to see her very first interview with me, where, I'm going to tell you a little tidbit. And if you've already watched it, you may already know this, but Julie's interview was the most nervous I've ever been in any of my interviews. And it was totally a God thing that I even got to interview her. I just had this feeling that it was going to be that night. It was at a conference, and that I needed to be ready and get her stuff ready first. And sure enough, she didn't have any openings during the conference except for that night. And so we got to go shoot the interview. But for the first little bit, I was just thinking, I'm talking to Julie Klassen, I'm talking to Julie Klassen, over and in my mind. And I probably would have named every single book of hers if you didn't stop and join the conversation. So, but after that, it was one of my favorite ones I've ever done. So check the show notes for that interview if you haven't seen it yet. It's wonderful. Julie is always amazing and so deep and such a great speaker. And a great writer and just communicator. So I really appreciate your work and all the time and thought and effort that you put into it.
Thank you very much.
And where can people find you online?
JulieKlassen.com or Facebook, where I spend way too much time.
Yes. And you can browse around for her interview and other author interviews at jennysnow.net and click the Book Club Life tab, and you can scroll through and find the one you want to watch. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and happy reading.